What if the dragon came first? Not as prophecy, not as some golden light moment of destiny. Just a ranger coming back from beyond the wall with a story that didn't fit the usual patterns of cold and fear and the dead. Something older in the high passes east of the Fist. Jon went to look because that was what he did. He found an egg wedged in rock, enormous and stone cold until he touched it. Then it was warm. Everything else up there in winter was cold, the rock, his hands, the air itself. The egg was warm like something that had been waiting a long time and had finally decided to stop waiting. He brought it back to Castle Black. He kept it in his quarters because he didn't know what else to do with it. 3 weeks later it cracked open with the quiet, controlled sound of pottery under pressure. Pale light at the edges. He sat on the floor for 4 hours while it worked. What came out was the size of a large cat, scales the dark warm gray of forged iron with bronze at the edges where the light caught them. Gold eyes that found him the way Ghost's eyes had found him years earlier on the road south. Recognition, the dragon pressed its head into his palm. Jon thought, so this is real. Ghost sat at the door the whole time, watching like he'd been expecting the arrival. Castle Black, 299 AC. Jon had been Lord Commander for 8 months, the youngest in the Watch's history, elected because the alternatives were worse and because competence has a way of announcing itself whether you want it to or not. He told no one at first, not Sam because Sam would have opinions, well-researched and mostly correct, and Jon wasn't ready for that yet. Not Aemon, because the old man was already carrying the weight of being the last living Targaryen and Jon still wasn't sure what the egg meant. He hadn't told Aemon about his own blood either. That conversation was waiting. The dragon grew. Quietly at first, a low resonance more felt than heard, the kind of vibration the men near the Lord Commander's quarters kept blamming on the wind. 2 weeks was all Jon managed before he accepted he had to tell someone. He told Sam. 90 seconds of silence then. That's a dragon. Yes, you have a dragon. Yes, in the Night's Watch. Yes, Sam sat down hard, historically unprecedented. The Watch and the Targaryens had history. And Sam stopped, looked at Jon, looked at the dragon that was already the size of a medium dog. You're a Targaryen. Dragons don't bond to anyone else. The histories are clear. Jon said that was a conversation for another time. When he figured out what any of it meant, Sam asked the dragon's name. Naming was commitment. Naming meant this was real and it stayed. Jon had been avoiding it. He said Scaros, High Valyrian for the Iron One, the one who came out of the dark forged. Sam looked at the gold eyes and said, right. The Lord Commander of the Night's Watch has a dragon named Iron and we're going to keep this contained until you know what to do with it. Jon said he needed time. Sam asked how much time he thought he had. Jon looked at the dragon that had already grown 2 inches and showed no signs of stopping. Not much. He told Aemon next, at night when the castle was quietest. The old man listened, then said, bring it to me. Scaros was restless on the walk over, unusual because the dragon was generally calm around Jon. Aemon's careful hands found the dragon's head. Scaros held still. Something moved across the 96-year-old face, inward rather than outward. Aemon said in High Valyrian, blood of my blood. Scaros made the resonant sound. Jon stood in the doorway and watched a man who had spent his life renouncing his birthright hold a dragon and be returned for a moment to something he had given up. He looked away. When Aemon spoke again, his voice was clearer. You know what you are? Jon said he knew some of it. Lyanna's son, Rhaegar. Aemon said he had known the father not well but enough to know what Rhaegar believed, that the world would need someone, that he had spent his life arranging for that someone to exist. Jon said people kept telling him about his father's beliefs. Nobody asked what he believed. Aemon turned toward the voice. What do you believe? Jon said he believed the dead were real. That what was beyond the wall was worse than anyone south of it had been told. That the dragon had appeared for a reason and he wasn't sure the reason was prophecy. The same reason weapons exist, not destiny, because they're needed. Aemon sat with that. You'll need to tell the Watch, not everything but enough, and you'll need to leave eventually. The Lord Commander of the Night's Watch cannot have a dragon and stay the Lord Commander. The Watch belongs to the realm. Dragons belong to the dynasty. Those aren't the same category. Jon said the Watch was his life. Aemon said the Watch was the life he chose before he knew what he was. This changes the available options. Jon said he wasn't marching on King's Landing. Aemon said no one had asked him to. But Joffrey was on the throne, the North was at war, and a Targaryen claimant with a dragon was a complication regardless of intentions. The dead didn't care about succession. The dead didn't care about Lannisters or Starks or chairs. The dead were coming, and whatever else Jon was, his dragon was the specific thing most useful against them. Fire. Jon called the assembly in the yard, not the hall. Visibility mattered. 600 men. Scaros at his feet, now the size of a large dog, wings partially spread the way a hawk establishes the fact of itself. Jon didn't pretend the rumors hadn't already done half the work. You've all seen it, you know it's real. I found an egg east of the Fist. 3 weeks later it hatched. What it means for the Watch is why we're here. Alizer Thorne, who had hated him since training and voted against his election, said it meant the Lord Commander had been keeping secrets. A dragon in their walls for a month without the assembly knowing. Jon said yes, fair criticism. He needed time to understand what he had. He was telling them now. The Watch was founded on the principle that what happens beyond the wall is everyone's concern. That hadn't changed. What had changed was what he had available to address it with. Thorne said you're Targaryen. Jon said by blood. My mother was Lyanna Stark. My father was Rhaegar Targaryen. I've known for 2 years. He said it flat, no apology, no performance. I didn't tell the Watch because I didn't think it was relevant to the Watch. The dragon makes it relevant. The yard erupted. He let it run, the shouting of men who felt deceived, men afraid of the dragon, men calculating what Targaryen blood meant for the South, men simply frightened of the unexpected. After 5 minutes he raised his hand. The yard quieted because it was trained to. I'm not leaving the Watch to march on King's Landing. I'm not using this position or this dragon for a political claim. The dead are real, you've seen them. The ranging reports have been building for 30 years. Dragonfire is one of the two things that stops the Night King himself, not the army. The source. I didn't find this egg because of prophecy. I found it because I went where most people don't go. What I'm going to do with it is what the Watch has always done. Face what's coming with what we have. Ed Tollett, who had a gift for cutting through noise, said, so you're staying? Jon said, I'm staying as long as I'm the right person to stay. When that changes, I'll tell you. Ed said, that's not actually an answer. Jon said, I know. Ed looked at Scarrows. The dragon looked back. Ed said, right, I'm going to need more wine. The ravens went out the same day, not from Jon, but from brothers who had family south of the wall and the human need to tell someone what they'd witnessed. The first official word that the news had reached King's Landing came from Varys, unsigned but unmistakable. The Lord Commander of the Night's Watch has a dragon. King's Landing is discussing this. It would be useful to know what the Lord Commander intends. Jon wrote back, the Lord Commander intends to defend the wall. What the dragon is useful for is fire. The dead don't negotiate. The reply came in 4 days. Daenerys Targaryen is in Essos with 3 dragons and an army. She is 6 weeks sailing from Westeros. She does not yet know you exist. You should consider what that means before she finds out from someone else. Jon sat with it. He had known abstractly that she existed. Sam had walked him through the family tree with the focused excitement of a man who'd been wanting to discuss it for years. He had not thought through what it meant for both of them to exist at once. 1 Targaryen with 3 dragons becomes 2 people with 4. The political arithmetic changes. He had been too busy managing a dragon, ranging season the dead, and 600 men learning to live with something impossible in their walls. Now he thought about it. She was going to come west eventually. She had been building toward it her whole life. When she arrived, she would have to decide what to do about the Targaryen already here with a dragon. That conversation was going to matter. He wrote to Sam, tell me everything you know about Daenerys Targaryen. Sam told him everything. Aemon died in the 4th month after the hatching, not unexpectedly. 96 years old, 60 of them at Castle Black. His body had been telling him for years that time was running out. He had managed the running out with the calm of someone who had made peace with most things and was waiting on a few last ones. The last one Jon understood afterward had been the dragon. He had been waiting to hold one more time before he died. He had given up the throne, the name, the dynasty, and become instead the man who kept the records and trained the ravens and was useful in the specific way of people who understand that use is a kind of love. He held Scarrows. He died 3 weeks later, not peacefully. The end was difficult the way ends are for old people when the body stops cooperating before the mind is ready, but not in pain. The Maester was precise about that because Jon needed him to be. Jon sat with the body after the Maester left. Scarrows came in, still small enough for the old doorways, and sat beside the bed and looked at the man who had held him and said, blood of my blood. Jon sat on the floor. He thought about Aemon Targaryen, who had been offered a throne and turned it down because he believed in the Night's Watch and that the Watch needed someone to believe in it. 96 years of believing in a thing the rest of the world was not particularly interested in, and continuing anyway. That's what I've been doing, Jon thought. I learned it from the wrong teacher. He was a better example than I understood. He said to Scarrows, he knew you were real. He held you and said this is what we are. This is the actual physical truth of what we are. He'd given up everything except the Watch. And then at the end he got to hold a dragon again. I'm going to try to be worth that, what he gave up. Scarrows made the resonant sound. Jon sat a long time. When he came out, Sam was in the corridor. I'm sorry, he was ready. That doesn't make it, I know. He held the Watch together for 60 years. I'm going to put that in the record, not just his service. What he actually did. Sam said he could help. Jon said I know you can. Come on, there's work. There was always work. Scarrows grew, steady, relentless, consistent, the growth of something suppressed for a century and making up for lost time. 3 months, the size of a horse. 6 months, larger, a year. The largest living thing at Castle Black, sleeping in the yard because he no longer fit indoors and because the warmth he threw off was something the brothers found they didn't mind. The cold beyond the wall was getting worse. The cold within the wall was getting better. Nobody acknowledged the irony except Sam. Jon flew for the first time in the 4th month. He didn't plan it. He was in the yard doing the morning presence routine the bond required when Scarrows simply spread his wings. Jon's hands found the base of the neck without deciding to. 3 steps and they were in the air, ascending. This is what it's like to be wrong about everything you thought your life was. The wall from above was not the wall from below. From below it was the fact that defined the north, the vertical edge of the world. From above it was a line across a landscape that went on without limit, 8,000 years of human intention made physical. He flew east along the wall over the haunted forest and looked north. The cold was visible from altitude in a way it wasn't from the ground, not ambient winter, directional cold, cold with a source. He could see the direction and the quality of the air that said there. That way, that is where the thing is building. Scarrows made the resonant sound. This is the reconnaissance no ranger could do. This is the view the watch has never had. 3 hours in the air produced more information about the threat than 30 years of ground ranging. That evening he briefed the senior rangers, Sam and whoever else needed to hear it. The cold front is 20 miles further south than the last report. It's moving faster, it's organized. The direction is consistent. This isn't weather. This is something with a trajectory. The Night King. Yes. We have time, months, maybe less than a year. The response we can mount from Castle Black with 600 men is not the response this requires. The response this requires is the realm, all of it, which means we need to reach Daenerys Targaryen. He wrote the letter himself, through the chain of contacts Eamon had maintained over 96 years of paying attention. Your Grace, my name is Jon Snow. I am the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I am also by blood Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, born at the Tower of Joy. I have known this for 3 years. I have chosen to keep the name I was given and the life I chose and the post I hold. 7 months ago I found a dragon egg in the mountains east of the Fist of the First Men. 6 months ago it hatched. The dragon is alive and growing and bonded to me in the way the histories describe. His name is Scarrows. I am not writing to you about the succession, I am writing to you about the dead. The Night King is real, the army of the dead is real. The cold moving south is not weather, it is organized, it has a direction, it will reach the wall within the year. Dragonfire is one of the 2 things the accounts say can stop the Night King himself. I have 1 dragon, you have 3. Neither of us alone is adequate to what is coming. I am asking for a meeting, not negotiation, not a political discussion. A meeting between 2 people with the same blood and the same fire who need to decide together what to do about the same threat. I have enclosed the ranging reports from the past 30 years, all of them unedited. Read them, then decide. Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He sent it. He didn't know if it would reach her. While he waited he did the work, ranging, training, distributing dragonglass Sam had arranged through contacts Jon had stopped examining too closely. He flew Scarrows every morning along the wall. The dead were getting closer. In Essos she read the letter 3 times, then the reports. 2 days. The specific quality of sitting very still with information and following it wherever it led without managing where she wanted it to go. She put the last report down. Tyrion, watching from the corner, said well. She said the Night King is real, based on 30 years of reports from men who have nothing to gain from inventing it. Yes, I think we have to take that position. He has a dragon, an interesting development. A Targaryen with a dragon already in Westeros. You're not the last Targaryen, which is either very good or very complicated depending on how you look at it. He's Rhaegar's son by a Stark mother who survived apparently, which the histories say otherwise. The histories are wrong, or were written by people who didn't know what happened in a tower in Dorne. He could be lying, he could be. A dragon bonded to him suggests otherwise. The histories are very clear that the bond doesn't work with fraud. He says he doesn't want the throne. People say many things. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying what he says he wants and what the situation produces may be different things regardless of his intentions. He has a dragon. He has a blood claim that supersedes yours by birth order. He has been at the wall keeping the realm safe while you've been in Essos building an army. If he wanted to use that he could. He's asking for a meeting, not demanding, asking. The ranging reports are real. I've had people in King's Landing who have known about the Watch reports for years and have been managing the information rather than acting on it. Everything in what he sent matches what I've seen suppressed. The dead are real and they're coming south, and he has a point that neither of you alone is adequate. What do you want me to do? I want you to meet him in person, not by letter. Read the room. Understand what he is before you decide what to do with him. He's the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch who has been keeping the wall since before you left Essos. He's Rhaegar's son with a dragon. He's asking for help with the dead. Those 3 things together are worth a meeting. Where? Somewhere he can get to and you can get to without either of you having the tactical advantage. Dragonstone neutral in the sense that it's yours, which gives you the advantage, but he's the one crossing the sea, which gives him the vulnerability. Or he can offer a location. I'll write back. She wrote, Lord Commander, I've read the reports. I'll meet you at Dragonstone. You have 4 weeks. Come alone except for necessary company. Bring your dragon, Daenerys Targaryen. The night before he sailed, Sam came with 2 cups and the look that meant he'd been thinking about something for a long time and had decided to say it. The letter you sent. You enclosed 30 years of ranging reports. You didn't lead with who you are, I led with what matters. Sam turned it over. I've been thinking about what you are. You're the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch and you're Rhaegar's son and you have a dragon. Those 3 things are separately enormous. Together they're unprecedented. And you keep treating them separately. The Lord Commander is the Lord Commander. The blood claim is the blood claim. The dragon is the dragon. You haven't let them become a single thing. What would a single thing look like? The king with the dragon coming to claim his throne. That's what anyone else in your position would be doing. That's the story the blood and the dragon tell if you put them together. It's not the story I'm telling. I know, I just want to make sure you know that too. That you're choosing it, not just drifting toward it because the dead are the most immediate problem. Jon looked at his friend. I grew up in this castle. I grew up as Ned Stark's bastard in the household of a man who was everything a lord should be and who died for it. I watched the North and I watched the Wall and I read the reports. When I became Lord Commander, I understood for the first time that what the Watch was doing was the most important thing anyone was doing and that no one was paying attention. Rhaegar believed in a prophecy. He arranged his whole life around the belief. He hurt people for it. He might also have been right about it. The dead are real. The Night King is real, something needed to be done, but the prophecy was about fire and the prince and the singular answer. It wasn't about this. It wasn't about 600 men in 3-man castles doing the specific unglamorous work of keeping the world safe from something the world didn't believe in. The Watch. Yes, what I am is the person who belongs to the Watch. The blood and the dragon are in service of that, not the other way around. Sam was quiet a long time. She's going to have opinions about that. Daenerys, she's been building toward the throne her whole life. She has an army and 3 dragons and a plan that involves ruling the realm. You're going to arrive and tell her the dead are the important thing and the throne is secondary. Yes, and she's going to disagree with me at first because the throne is not secondary to her. It's the thing she's been building toward. And then she's going to read 30 years of wrangling reports and she's going to understand that I'm right and the throne is secondary to the specific thing that's coming. You're very confident about that. I'm confident that she's intelligent and that the reports are convincing. Everything else I'm holding loosely. What's everything else? What she's like in person, whether the plan works, whether I can actually get the realm moving in time. Whether the Night King is where the wrangling reports say he is or whether he's moved again. The usual things, the Watch will be in good hands with Ed. Ed is competent, Ed is more than competent. He's the person who does what needs doing without being asked and without expecting recognition for it. Like you, I'm not going to respond to that, because it embarrasses you, because it's manipulative and I know you're manipulating me into staying while you sail south. I should go with you. Someone needs to stay who knows the reports from inside, who can brief the northern lords when they arrive, who can explain the pattern to people who haven't been reading it for years. That's me. That's you. I need you here, Sam, not because I can't manage without you, though the last year would have been significantly worse without you, but because the Watch needs someone who believes in it when I'm not here. You're going to come back. Yes, you're going to deal with the dead and come back and the Watch is going to be properly funded and properly staffed and all the things you've been working toward are going to happen. That's the plan. It's a good plan. It's a realistic plan. Those are different, I'm afraid. I know not about the dead, about you. You go toward things that should kill you and they don't kill you and eventually the probability catches up. I've been dead once. I'm not interested in repeating it. That's not reassuring. I know, keep the records, keep the reports current. Keep Ed informed of everything and make sure he reads every wrangling dispatch before he acts on anything. I know, and write to me, tell me what you see from here. I'll be making decisions about the wrangling patterns from a long way away and I need your eyes. All right, good, get some sleep. The morning comes early and the northern lords start arriving in 2 days. Jon, he'd be proud, and he spent 15 years carrying the secret and the specific thing he was carrying it for is going to go stop the Night King. He'd have been proud, I know. He left the Watch in Ed's practical command with Sam as counsel and 3 sets of instructions. Watch the cold front, send ravens if anything moved, don't tell the crown what was happening until Jon had a chance to tell them himself. Ed looked at him. You're going to meet the Dragon Queen. Yes, with your dragon. I'm not leaving Scarrows at the wall. Good luck at sea. Scarrows at sea was its own challenge. The White Harbor captain took one look and went through a visible process of professional recalibration. The dragon flies alongside. Yes, he won't eat anything or anyone. Right, Scarrows flew alongside for 2 days, then out of curiosity or boredom flew ahead and waited on the horizon 3 times before concluding that ships were too slow to be interesting and taking a route of his own. Jon stood at the stern and watched him disappear and reappear. He thought about the wall behind him and what he was sailing toward. He had been Lord Commander for a year and 2 months. He had been managing the Watch and the Wall and the dead and the political fallout of being a Targaryen with a dragon. He had been doing all of it with the focused competence of someone who had decided that competence was the answer to everything because everything else, the blood, the name, the claim, what it meant that Rhaegar Targaryen had arranged for him to exist, was too large to address and competence was manageable. Sailing toward Daenerys Targaryen, his father's sister, the living embodiment of the dynasty he'd been born into and had never asked to be born into, it occurred to him that he had been doing competence as a way of not doing the other thing. The other thing was figuring out what he actually wanted. Not the Watch, not the battle against the dead, not the tactical problems that had filled every day for years. What he wanted from the life he apparently had, which was longer and stranger and more full of impossible things than the life he'd originally planned. He didn't come to conclusion. I'm going to meet her and that meeting will produce the next thing to figure out and I'll figure it out then. That is not the answer, it's the best I have right now. Scarrows appeared from the south and landed on the prow. At least I know what he wants. He's intensely curious about the specific direction of the fire, the cold. He orients to the cold the way a compass orients to north. We're the same that way. Dragonstone in early morning. Volcanic rock rising dark against the lighter sky, Scarrows circling. The air warmer and sharper like the island itself breathed differently. He expected a steward or an advisor. He got 3 dragons, 2 airborne, the enormous dark one and a second green and bronze circling the harbor at height. The third sat at the dock's end. He didn't know at first that the woman on the dock was Daenerys Targaryen. She was dressed plainly, standing at the edge with her arms at her sides, watching him come in with the full attention of someone doing nothing except watching. Then the silver hair and the violet eyes the histories always mentioned and that he'd thought were probably exaggerated and were not. She watched him dock. He stepped onto the dock. She looked at him. He looked at her. He had thought about this moment on the ship in the way you think about things you can't fully prepare for and are trying to prepare for anyway. She said, "You're shorter than I thought." He said, "I get that." She said, "The dragons are the same size." He turned. Scarrows had come around the headland and was landing on the upper battlements. She was right. Scarrows and the green and bronze were approximately the same scale. He's been growing since I found him. How long ago? 10 months. She looked up at Scarrows. Something moved across her expression that he couldn't yet read, not quite the queen's face. Not quite the full emotion behind it. Something in between. Come inside. They didn't have the political conversation first. He'd expected the succession, the claims, the specific landscape of 2 Targaryens in the same room. She took him to the dragons instead. To the shore below the castle where Drogon had landed on the black sand. She stood beside the enormous dark dragon with the easy familiarity of someone who had been here 1,000 times and looked at Jon. "What do you feel? When you're near them, my dragons, what do you feel?" He paid attention to what he actually felt rather than what he thought he should feel. Recognition, yes, like Ghost. When Ghost first came, not "this is a wolf I am responsible for," more like "this is something that is the same order of thing as I am. You've thought about this. I had 10 months of not knowing what I had to think about it. She walked to Drogon and put her hand on the dragon's neck. "Drogon, this is, what do I call you?" "Jon is fine, I know the other name, I'm not using it." "Drogon, this is Jon." The enormous dragon looked at him with amber eyes doing assessment. Jon stepped forward. He didn't reach out, that felt wrong, too presumptuous. He just stood and let the assessment happen. Drogon exhaled, warmth that was not fire but fire and potential contained. Drogon lowered his head. Daenerys made a sound that wasn't language. Jon put his hand on the dragon's nose. Different from Scarrows, different bond, different temperature, different quality of recognition. But recognition, the same root, the same old blood. He stepped back. She was looking at him with an expression he'd spent the whole sail trying to prepare for and had not prepared for. Not political or strategic or guarded. The expression of someone who has been something specific their entire life, the last dragon, the last Targaryen, the singular fire in a cold world, and has just encountered the evidence that they were not alone. He understood that expression from the inside. "I didn't ask for it either. I know I've been the last of my family since I was born, the last everything. You've been the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I've been Ned Stark's bastard most of my life." He sounds like he was worth being the bastard of. Yes, he died for the secret, for what I am. I never got to thank him. My brother Rhaegar died at the Trident. He believed in a prophecy. He believed the world would need someone. He made choices based on that belief that cost everyone around him. "You're the person the choices produced." "I know, are you the person the prophecy meant?" "I don't believe in prophecies. Neither did I. I believe in dragons. I believe in what I can see. I'm deciding what I believe about you." "That's fair. Come inside, we should talk about the dead." The war room had a map of the realm larger and more detailed than anything at Castle Black. Tyrion was there. Jon looked at him and thought, this is the most dangerous person in the room who isn't a Targaryen. Not dangerous in the way of fighters. Dangerous in the way of someone who processes information at a speed that leaves everyone else responding to where he's already been. "You're not what I expected, I get that. You're wearing a Night's Watch cloak. I'm the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. You're Aegon Targaryen with a dragon. Both things are true. I prefer the first one, fair enough. He's not going to make this easy. I didn't ask for easy." Jon laid out what he'd seen from the air. The cold front's position and movement, the patterns in 30 years of ranging reports, the specific gap between what the Watch had and what the threat required. Clean line between facts and analysis. No drama, no performance. Tyrion listened with both hands folded, eyes tracking between the map and Jon's face and the windows. Daenerys listened with her whole body, not the managed pose of the throne room but the full physical attention of someone for whom information was genuinely important. "You flew the reconnaissance yourself." "Yes, that's data we don't have anywhere else. The Watch reports are ground level. The air is different. It's why I needed to get here, not just to ask for help, to show someone what the view from above shows, and what the view from above shows is months, maybe less, the Night King. The accounts say fire and Valyrian steel. The accounts are consistent on that. Yes, how consistent? Multiple independent sources across the histories. The primary engagement has to involve both elements in the same place at the same time. Dragonglass for the army. Fire and Valyrian steel for the source. You have Valyrian steel. Longclaw. Yes, I have 3 dragons, I have 1. Scarrows is not fully grown, but he's past the threshold where he can produce combat-level fire. The question is how we coordinate 4 dragons against an army of the dead and a Night King. That's a very specific question. The threat is very specific. He doesn't lead with the throne, no, or the claim, no, I can hear you, I know, the succession question doesn't go away because we're talking about the dead. Your claim supersedes hers by birth order. That's a fact whether you acknowledge it or not. The dead don't care about the succession. The lords of Westeros do. Then the lords of Westeros are looking in the wrong direction. The succession question can wait. What's coming doesn't wait. I think I actually believe you. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I find it extremely inconvenient. She suggested the first joint flight on the second morning. He was in the yard before anyone else was awake, old habit from the wall where the pre-dawn hour was when the cold announced its intentions. She appeared at the entrance. Do you want to fly them together, all 4, to see what the dynamic is? We're going to be coordinating in a battle, knowing how they interact in the air matters. Yes, she called them. All 4 assembled with the authority of animals that had understood an invitation and were responding on their own terms. Drogon the center of gravity, Regal and Viserion on either side. Scarrows at the far end, smallest, darkest, gold eyes watching. Jon expected competition, territory, animal politics. What he got was recognition, the ease of creatures that knew what they were, not familiarity, something more fundamental. Blood. Scarrows walked to Regal. The green dragon looked at him. Scarrows made the resonant sound. Regal answered in kind. They know each other. They know what they are, the same thing like meeting someone who speaks your language when you've been in a country where no one does. Yes, shall we? Flying together was different from flying alone. The rhythm with Scarrows had become familiar, the temperature of the air, the angle at which the wall appeared and receded. Flying with Drogon beside him was like fighting beside someone for the first time and discovering that you anticipate each other, that the gaps in your approach are filled by theirs without discussion. She flew the way he'd expected and differently, better at the turns. She'd been doing it for years. He compensated with speed that surprised her. He could see it in the adjustment she made to stay alongside. They flew south along the coast, then east, then north. They didn't speak. You can't speak easily at altitude with the wind. But the flight was a kind of conversation, the negotiation of 2 riders and 4 dragons finding the shared rhythm. After an hour they landed on the black sand. You're better than I expected. I had months of practice in a very unforgiving environment. The wall, yes. What does it feel like flying over it? Like looking at a decision someone made 8,000 years ago. Someone decided the world needed protecting and they built the largest structure in the known world to protect it. It's humbling. People built it. Yes, not dragons, people and dragons. The accounts say together, we're going to need more than 4 dragons. We're going to need the realm that's currently at war with itself. Yes, Joffrey is on the throne. Joffrey is on the throne and the Lannisters are fighting the Starks and the north is burning and the Night King is 20 miles further south than he was 6 months ago. We have to stop the war first or we have to make the war irrelevant. How? Show them what's coming. The white, he had brought one in a box from Castle Black. Show them the dead the same way I showed you the reports, not description, proof. And then the people who matter start making different calculations. The political conversation happened on the 3rd night, after enough shared understanding that it could be honest rather than strategic. Jon had learned from watching that the order of conversations mattered, values before positions, what people actually cared about before what they'd accept. She came to the room where he'd been working with maps and sat across from him. We need to talk about the throne. I know, your claim supersedes mine. By birth order, yes, the lords will know that once it becomes public knowledge, it will become public knowledge. Yes, what do you want? I want the dead stopped, I mean that. I've been spending every morning looking at the cold front moving south and every night reading about what happens when the wall falls and everything else. The throne, the succession, what happens to Joffrey and Cersei and the Lannisters. All of it is less important than the specific thing that is coming north of that wall, and after. When the dead are stopped, if the dead are stopped, when we have 4 dragons, we have Valyrian steel, we have the reports and the preparation that 30 years of wrangling produced. We are going to stop the dead. She said it with the flat certainty of a woman who had decided something was going to happen and was not entertaining alternatives. When they are stopped. What do you want? I want the North to be safe. I want the Watch to be what it should have been, properly funded, properly staffed, able to do what it was built to do. I want Winterfell, whatever that means. I want to go home. That's not a claim to the throne. No, people will push you toward it. Let them push. If you don't take it, then you take it, which is what should happen. You've been building toward this your whole life. You have the army and the dragons and the legitimacy of everything you've done to build both. My blood is an accident of my father's belief in a prophecy. Your claim is the product of 15 years of deliberate work. Those aren't equivalent. You genuinely believe that. Yes, you're the most unusual person I've ever met. I've been told I'm not what people expect. That's not. You're the only person since I was a child who has told me what I want to hear and meant something real by it. Most people tell me what I want to hear because I'm the person with the army. You told me what you actually think. I generally do. I know we need to decide together, not what happens to the throne, that's secondary. We need to decide how we approach the lords, how we present what we have, how we get the realm moving before it's too late. Tyrion, yes, he has a plan. He always has a plan. Do you trust him? I trust that he serves himself and that what serves him right now is what serves you and what serves you right now is what serves the realm. As long as those things are aligned, yes, that's a complicated yes. All the useful yesies are. She almost smiled. My brother Rhaegar believed the world would need someone. You told me. I've been thinking about it since I got your letter, about what he arranged for, about you. He arranged for the wrong thing. He arranged for the prince that was promised. One person, the singular hero of the prophecy, but what you are isn't a single hero. You're the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch who found a dragon because he went to places most people didn't go. You're the person who wrote me a letter about the dead instead of a letter about the throne. What my brother arranged for wasn't the hero the prophecy described. It was the person who was going to figure out that the prophecy was wrong about what was needed. What's needed isn't one person. It never was, it's people. This specific configuration of people and dragons and information at this specific moment. Rhaegar thought the world needed a prince. The world needed us. That's the most generous interpretation of a man who hurt a lot of people I've ever heard. I've had a lot of time to make peace with my brother's choices. He hurt my mother. Yes, she chose it. She's alive. She'd tell you she chose it. That doesn't mean it didn't cost her. No, it doesn't. What was he like? I never knew him. I was born after everything ended. Would I have her story? What do the stories say? That he was brilliant and sad and completely convinced he was right. That he played the harp beautifully. That he loved his wife and was fair to his people and believed in the prophecy the way some people believe in the gods, not as a comfort but as a weight, like carrying something. Yes, I know what that's like. I know you do. The lords came. Not all of them, but the ones whose decisions would cascade. Stannis because he followed evidence and the evidence was compelling. Olenna because she had been bored since the war started and this was the most interesting invitation in years. Several northern lords because Jon Snow had sent personal ravens and Jon Snow was the Lord Commander and a Targaryen and had a dragon and those three things combined were sufficient. Tyrion had worded the invitations carefully. You are invited to learn something that the small council has been failing to act on. Bring your own Meister if you distrust our facts. Jon gave no introduction. Introductions gave skepticism time to organize itself. He opened the box. The white came out. The courtyard had the reaction he'd seen twice before and that never became less instructive. The specific moment when people who had not believed something became people who had to believe it. A collective held breath and the release of it. He touched dragonglass to the white. The white stopped. How many? The cold front has moved 30 miles south in 6 months. The army behind it is, I've seen it from the air. The estimates from the ranging reports are conservative. You've flown reconnaissance. Yes, how current? 2 weeks before I sailed here. How long until it reaches the wall? 3 months, maybe 4. And the wall holds against the army, yes, if it's manned properly. Against the Night King himself, the accounts say he can breach it if the right conditions are met. The wall was built to hold. It wasn't built for the specific kind of assault that's coming. What is the specific kind? The Night King doesn't fight like a general. He raises the dead and he commands them. Every corpse he reaches becomes part of his army. He's been moving south for 30 years and the army has been growing the entire time. The conventional response, castle walls, soldiers, cavalry, works against the soldiers and doesn't work against the source. And what works against the source? Fire. How much fire? We have 4 dragons. We need to go north. We need to find the Night King and we need to engage him directly. What we also need is for the rest of you to not be fighting each other while we do. The war in the south, the Lannisters and the Starks, and whatever Joffrey decides to do about any of this, none of it matters if the wall falls. All of it becomes moot. There is no kingdom to fight over if the dead win. We need a ceasefire. We need resources moving north instead of toward each other. And we need it to happen now, not when the wall is already compromised. You're asking us to trust a Targaryen queen and the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I'm asking you to look at what just stopped moving in this courtyard and decide whether you'd rather manage the political situation in the south or deal with that. What do you need? Tyrion found him at the cliff edge that evening, the side where the volcanic rock dropped to the sea and there was nothing between you and the horizon. You give a good demonstration. I've given it a few times. Stannis is convinced. He was convinced before he arrived, if I'm honest. The man processes evidence before other people have finished receiving it. Olenna is amused and therefore useful, which is the only state in which Olenna is not dangerous. The Northern Lords are loyal in the way Northern Lords are loyal, because they believe in something and you've given them something to believe in. I've given them facts. The fact of the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch standing in a courtyard with a dragon at his back and a dead thing at his feet is not just a fact. It is a fact with considerable persuasive weight. Don't undersell what you did today. I'm not selling anything, I know, that's why it worked. You two are going to need to figure out the succession. The dead are coming and the succession still needs figuring out, not because the lords care more about thrones than survival. Today demonstrated that they don't, at least not the ones you want, but because after when this is done the question of who governs the realm is going to require an answer. And the answer should be decided before someone else decides it for you. She should govern it. I believe you believe that. And the lords of Westeros have just learned that there is a Targaryen king with a dragon who is also the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch and who stood up in a courtyard and gave them the clearest presentation of the actual threat they've received in 30 years. They're going to have opinions about what happens after. I don't want the throne. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. What do you want? Winterfell, the North, the Watch properly maintained. A world where the people who should be governing it are governing it, and I don't have to manage anything except what I'm actually good at managing. What are you good at managing? The cold and the things that live in it. That is either the most self-aware thing I've ever heard or the most limiting thing, and I can't determine which. Why not both? You and she are going to get along remarkably well. It's going to be deeply inconvenient for anyone who is hopping to play you against each other. Good, yes, also yes. The Cersei problem, she's at Casterly Rock with Joffrey and the Lannister gold in a war she's been running for a year. She's not going to stop because a white stopped moving in a courtyard she wasn't in. She needs a specific reason to stop. The right kind of specific reason. What's the right kind? Her children. Cersei will do anything for her children. If she understands that Joffrey's future looks very different in a world where the dead have not destroyed the realm, the calculation changes. You're going to go to her. I was planning on it anyway. She's my sister. Someone has to talk to her, and I'm the only person on this island she might listen to. And Jaime is easier. Jaime has been waiting for a reason to do the right thing for 15 years. He just needs to be shown what the right thing is. Go, I'll go. While I'm gone, you and she should work out the coordination, the tactical plan, who flies where and when. The dragons need to know each other better than they do. 4 dragons acting without coordination is less useful than 2 acting together. I know she'll have ideas. She always has ideas. How do you know that? You've known her 3 days. She reads the same way I do. Like she's building something rather than filling something in. Lord Commander, yes, try not to get killed before we deal with the dead. I've been waiting for someone worth planning with for most of my adult life, and I'd rather not have to start over. I'll try. Tyrion went south. Stannis went north to organize the Baratheon forces toward the wall rather than the Lannister conflict. The Northern Lords went home to muster. Jon and Daenerys stayed at Dragonstone and worked the tactical planning because it was urgent and because they were both built for it, the specific pleasure of 2 people who process information the same way, finding a shared problem to process. 8 hours on the maps the first day, then they flew the scenario they'd built, revised the maps based on what the flying showed, and went back for another 4. Missandei took notes with the patient efficiency of someone who had been doing this a long time and had learned to be invisible in rooms where important things were being decided. Jorah Mormont stood at the door with the expression of a man watching something he'd been watching for a long time take a new shape. On the second day, Jon noticed and said, when Daenerys was out of the room, "You've been with her a long time, since Essos. You know her well enough. What am I missing about her? What she needs that she doesn't say she needs? She's been the only one for a long time, the only Targaryen, the only dragonrider, the person who carries the entire weight of it alone. She won't say that. She's built the carrying into how she holds herself. What she needs is what you're already doing without being asked. What am I doing? Treating it like a shared problem, not her problem that you're helping with, not your problem that she's helping with, a problem that belongs to both of you because of what you both are. It is a shared problem. I know, she knows, that's the point. The dragons work together daily, the specific acclimatization of animals that share a bloodline learning to share airspace. Drogon remained the largest and most dominant, and established this fact once early with an aerial assertion that Scarrows received with the equanimity of an animal that had decided it was not interested in that particular argument and was going to make its claim to relevance through other means. Scarrows's other means were speed. Jon had suspected it from the months at Castle Black, but Dragonstone gave him the comparison. Not as large as Drogon, not as powerful on the direct charge, not the overwhelming physical force, but Scarrows moved differently. The compact efficiency of something built for cold, formed in the high passes beyond the wall where the air was thin and unforgiving, and survival required something different from pure size. Daenerys noticed on the 4th day, he's faster than the others. Yes. In the cold specifically, he was hatched there, he's been flying in it for 10 months. The cold doesn't slow him the way it slows the others. That's significant, I know. In the engagement beyond the wall, the colder it gets, the better he performs relative to the others. The Night King's cold is going to be worse than anything we've flown in. The others will be working against it. Scarrows will be not working with it exactly, not slowed by it. He goes for the Night King. Yes, you go for the Night King. Yes. The others cover the army. Yes, and I'm separated from you in the coldest part of the engagement. I know I don't like that, I know, but it's the right deployment. Scarrows and I for the source, you and the 3 for the army. The army can't be left alone or it overwhelms everything. If something goes wrong with you, then you finish it with what you have. That's what we do. We make the plan that works and we execute it. And if part of it fails, the other part adapts. I've been planning wall defenses for a year. The plan that works isn't the plan that protects everyone. It's the plan that solves the problem. You've been doing this since the Watch. Yes, making the right plan instead of the comfortable one. Yes, I hate it. I know, it's correct. Yes. I'm going to fight the Night King with you. Daenerys, I'm going to fight the Night King with you, not as the distraction, not holding the army while you go for the source alone. We'll take a different split, Regal and Viserion for the army. They can manage the flanks without me. Drogon and I with you and Scarrows on the source. That's the 4 dragons are a resource. How we allocate them is a decision. 2 for the army and 2 for the Night King is a valid allocation. I'm not sending you north alone. I wasn't going to be alone. I'm not sending you north without me. That's not tactical, that's personal. Yes, we shouldn't let personal Jon. I've been alone with this my entire life. I have been the only Targaryen, the only dragonrider, the only person who understands what the blood means from the inside. And then you appeared and you are the only other person who understands what the blood means from the inside. I'm not tactical about that. I'm not going to be. 2 for the army and 2 for the Night King. Yes, we go in together, and we come back together. Yes, all right. The conversation at Casterly Rock was the hardest thing Tyrion had done in years. Not because Cersei was difficult. She was difficult the way water was difficult. It did whatever the terrain required and was impossible to permanently contain. She was the most intelligent person in most rooms and the only person better at managing the specific terrain of King's Landing than she was currently at Dragonstone with a dragon. He came without announcement because any announcement would have been intercepted and managed before it reached her. She was in the solar. Tyrion, Cersei, you're alive. Your agents are better than I thought. I know where you've been. Dragonstone, yes, with the Dragon Queen. And the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. She was very still. I'm going to tell you something and I need you to hear it before you respond. Not respond while you're hearing it. I have been to 2 demonstrations of what is coming south of the wall. I have been shown a white. I have seen the ranging reports from 30 years of Night's Watch records. I have been briefed by the Lord Commander who has been flying reconnaissance over the cold front on Dragonback. The dead are real, the army is real, the Night King is real, the wall will be compromised within the year if no one acts. This is a ploy. Cersei, look at me. I have never in 30 years of being your brother told you something that wasn't true when I needed you to believe it. Not once. When I came to you with something real I was always right. You know this, I am telling you that the dead are real. I am telling you that if the wall falls none of the rest of this, the castle, the Westerlands, everything we've both been fighting over matters. There will be nothing left to rule and the Targaryen girl is the person who has 3 of the 4 dragons required to stop what's coming. Yes, and the Lord Commander is Rhaegar's son with the 4th dragon. Yes, so the succession is a question for after. Right now it's a question of whether there's a realm to succeed to. Joffrey's future is better in a realm where the dead have been stopped. Tommen's, Miachella, your children need a living world. Cersei, that's the only thing I'm asking you to prioritize. What do you want from me? A ceasefire, immediate, unconditional on the condition of the dead being addressed. You stop fighting the North stops fighting you, everyone turns toward the actual problem, and after we negotiate, after the succession and the throne and all of it, after. She was quiet a very long time. He watched her make the calculation. He knew her well enough to know when she was calculating versus when she was decided. She was calculating, which meant she hadn't decided, which meant there was room. Jaime, what about him? He's at the Rock. He'll want to go north, probably. He always wanted to do the right thing even when the right thing was wrong. If I agree to this, if I hold the south while the rest of them go north, what happens to the throne? Negotiation. Real negotiation, not the kind where the outcome is predetermined. Daenerys Targaryen on the throne, possibly, and the Lord Commander. The Lord Commander wants Winterfell and a properly maintained watch. He said so publicly and in writing. You believe him. I believe that he hasn't lied to anyone yet and has had every reason to. Yes, the children, safe, both scenarios. Whether Daenerys rules or whether the succession becomes a negotiation, the children are not the enemy. I'll have that in writing if you want it. In writing means nothing. In writing for me means something. I've never broken a contract. I want Jaime in the north. What? If this is real, if the dead are real and the wall is falling, I want Jaime in the north, not trapped at Casterly Rock managing a war that doesn't matter anymore. He deserves to die for the right thing if he's going to die, not for me. When did you become generous? I'm not being generous, I'm being realistic. He's been fighting my wars for 20 years, he should fight a real one once. I'll tell him from me, I'll tell him from you, ceasefire in writing, the children's safety guaranteed, and when this is over, when the dead are stopped, the negotiation is real, not a pretense. Yes, get out Tyrion, I have letters to write. The ravens went out from Dragonstone and Castle Black simultaneously. Jon wrote the one from Castle Black himself, to every northern lord and every Stark bannerman, the way he wrote things that needed to be believed. Facts first, the ask second, nothing softened. The Night King is 3 months from the wall. The dead are real. I have flown the reconnaissance. The Watch has been keeping this wall with 600 men, and we have reached the limit of what 600 men can do against what is coming. I am asking for everything you have, not because I believe in prophecy, not because I believe the right blood in the right hands changes history, because the dead are coming and the wall needs bodies and you are the bodies I trust. Jon Snow, Lord Commander, you're king if you'll have me, but Lord Commander first. Robb Stark sent back in 2 days. Every man the North can spare, I'm coming with them. Jon read the letter. He thought about Winterfell and the Yard and the years of growing up beside Robb, who was his brother in every way that was real and his cousin in every way that was blood, and who had spent the last year fighting a different war with the same determination. He wrote back, come bring ice. It's good to hear from you. Robb's next letter said, it's good to hear from you too, Your Grace. Jon looked at it a long time. I'm going to have to deal with the Your Grace eventually, after the dead. He sent back, Jon, just Jon. They came. The North first because the North believed most readily. The northern lords who had always known something was wrong with the wall and who had been waiting for someone with authority and a plan. Stannis' forces next, the Baratheon men who had been pointing at the wrong enemy and who turned toward the wall with the efficiency of soldiers used to being redirected. The Tyrell contingent smaller than Jon would have liked because it was a long way from Highgarden and because Olenna had sent what she could and kept what the Reach needed to function. Jaime Lannister arrived alone, midday on a gray Tuesday with a single horse and his gold armor and the missing hand that was the mark of what loyalty had cost him. He asked at the gate for the Lord Commander. Jon met him in the yard. "I heard you were coming. My sister sent me." "Why?" "She said I deserved to fight a real war once." "I think she was being generous. She was being Cersei. Tyrion told me about the conversation. She's keeping the South stable while we manage the North. That's not generous. That's the calculation of a woman who has decided what she needs from this situation. She's protecting you by sending you somewhere you want to be. That's the part that's generous." She said, "You're Rhaegar's son." Yes, he was a better man than people say. Also worse than people say. He was both those things at the same time. The eyes are stark. My mother, she was remarkable. That's the right word. She chose him. Whatever the histories say, she chose him. I know, I was Kingsguard. There were things I should have done differently. There are a lot of those. You can do something useful with this one. You're the finest swordsman in the realm one-handed. I need fighters who know what they're doing in the cold. Can you fight in winter gear? I'll learn. Good, come. I'll show you what we're dealing with. Robb arrived a week before Daenerys with 8,000 northern men, and a face that had aged 3 years in one. The specific cost of a year of war and the specific additional cost of being Robb Stark, which was carrying everything without complaint and therefore carrying it on your face. He came through the gate and saw Jon on the battlements and stopped. Jon came down. "You have a dragon." "Yes." "Named Scarrows." "Yes," which means iron and high Valyrian. "You've been reading since your first Raven." "I've been reading everything I could find. He's bigger than I expected. He's been growing for 10 months, right? You should have told me about which part, any of it, the blood, the dragon. The father kept the secret because he had to. You kept it because you chose to." "Yes, that's different. I know why, because the secret was a weapon. The blood claim and the dragon together are a very specific political weapon. And once you know a weapon exists, you start seeing the situations where you might use it. I didn't want anyone seeing those situations. I didn't want anyone, including you, making decisions about the dead based on what was politically useful about me. I wouldn't have. You would have tried not to. You're better at separating politics from judgment than most people, but it would have been present, the knowledge, it would have been in every conversation. I needed the conversations to be about the dead. They were for me anyway. I've been fighting a war for a year, a political war. Joffrey and Cersei and the succession and what kind of realm we're going to have. And the whole time I've been reading your ravens about the cold front and the ranging reports and thinking, this is the real war. The other one is a distraction. I know. How long have you known about Daenerys? Sam told me after the hatching. I found the letter about her in the Watch's intelligence from the same contact who told us about the ceasefire. And you wrote to her? Yes, without telling anyone. I told Aemon before he died. He thought it was the right move. What is she like? Not what you expect. What do I expect? Someone who wants the throne and is using the dead as a pretext to get it. And what is she actually? Someone who has been carrying the same weight I've been carrying from a different direction for longer. Someone who built everything toward a specific destination and arrived at the destination and found that the destination was more complicated and larger and more worth doing than the simplified version she'd been building toward. You trust her. I trust the specific configuration of what she wants and what I want and what the dead require and how those three things align. Yes, I trust her. Right, I'm going to need to meet her. She arrives in a week. I'll be here. He stood in the yard when she arrived with 3 dragons and watched the arrival with the expression of a man who had been reading about this moment for a year and was now in it. He watched the way Jon went to meet her. He watched them stand in the yard and look at each other with the ease of 2 people who have already done the hard work of figuring each other out and are now past it. He watched her look at the wall. He thought Jon was right. She's not what I expected. He went to introduce himself. She arrived from the south with 3 dragons. Jon watched from the battlements. The sight of it, 3 dragons from the south approaching the wall with the morning light behind them, had no precedent in the living memory of anyone at Castle Black. It produced in the assembled brothers of the Watch and the northern soldiers and Stannis' men a silence that was not fear and not awe and was something older than both. She landed Drogon in the yard. The other 3 arranged themselves on the wall and the towers with the quality of animals that have understood the strategic situation. She got down, she looked at the wall. He had seen at Dragonstone the way she looked at things she found genuinely large. He saw it now, the same quality but more complete, because the wall was genuinely large in a way Dragonstone, for all its atmosphere, was not. I understand now. What? Why you are the way you are. You've been keeping this. Your whole life standing in front of this. Not my whole life. A few years, long enough. Show me everything. He showed her everything. The ranging reports updated. The cold front's position 2 weeks current from the last flight. The specific gap between what they had and what the threat required. She listened with the attention she always brought and asked the same quality of questions she always asked. And by the end of the briefing she had the picture clearly in a way that took most people 3 sessions to build. Jeor Mormont sat in the corner and watched her absorb it. Jon watched Mormont watch her. The man has been waiting for someone to take this seriously for 20 years. He's now in a room with 2 Targaryens and 4 dragons and the full force of a mobilized response. He doesn't know what to do with that, I know the feeling. After the briefing, she went to the top of the wall alone. He understood. The wall required its own accounting. He needed to stand at the top of it alone before he could do anything else. She came back an hour later. We go north tomorrow. Yes. The cold is closer than your last report. I know, you felt it too. Scarrows has been oriented north since we arrived. He knows where it is, then let him lead. Yes. The night before, he found the place on the wall where the cold pressed clearest. The spot on the eastern reach of the battlements where the directional cold, the organized cold, the cold that was not weather, came through strongest. He'd found it in his first week as Lord Commander and had come back to it regularly since, standing with it the way you stand with the thing you're afraid of, because familiarity is not the same as comfort but is the step before it. She found him there. He wasn't surprised. She stood beside him, the north spread out below, the forests and the mountains and the dark of everything that was coming from deeper in that dark. The sky was clear in the way winter skis were clear, absolutely without the softening of cloud. The stars very present and very cold. Are you afraid? Yes, good, you said that like you mean it. I've been afraid since I was born. I was born into a dynasty that had already ended. I've been afraid of getting it wrong since before I understood what getting it wrong looked like. The fear is useful. I stopped trying not to be afraid years ago and started trying to be afraid and moving anyway. That's what it is. Yes, after what? After the dead are stopped, after the realm is stable, after I want to take you to Winterfell, I want to show you where I grew up, where I learned what the North is. You've been building toward Westeros your whole life from outside it. I grew up inside it. In the specific northern inside of it that is different from what the South is. I want you to know what you're governing. That's a long time away. Yes, but I'm going to think about it. While we're up there, I'm going to have something to think about that isn't just the dead. What else do you want? After I told Tyrion, tell me, Winterfell, the North safe, the watch what it should be. You on the throne governing the realm the way you've been building toward. And you, beside you, not on the throne, beside it. The way you fight in the air, you don't need someone to match you. You need someone who fills the gaps, someone who goes where you can't go and does the specific thing you can't do. You're the queen, I'm the person who goes where no one else will go. That's not a diminishment. I know most men would hear that as a diminishment. I'm not most men. No, you're not the thing you described being beside rather than instead. That's what I have with Missandei, with Jorah, what I've been building for years. Yes. You're describing the thing I've needed and haven't been able to find with someone who shares what I am. Yes, you arrived 3 weeks ago. I know, this is very fast. Things happen fast when the dead are coming. Is that what this is? No, I know the difference between urgency and something real. This is something real. After the dead, show me Winterfell. Yes. They crossed the wall at first light. 4 dragons and their riders. Below them the combined force, the Watch and the Northern Lords and Stannis' men and James Lannister soldiers and the specific mixed army of people who had looked at a white stopping in a courtyard and decided the calculation had changed. Scarrows oriented north immediately. He'd been doing it since they arrived at the wall, but now he did it with the focused purposefulness of an animal that had found the scent. Jon felt it in the dragon's body, the tightening of everything, the shift from patrol posture to the something is their orientation. He looked at Daenerys, she looked back, he nodded, she nodded, they split. Regal and Viserion with the secondary riders. Daenerys had been training turned toward the army's flanks, the mass of the dead already visible from altitude, the enormous moving field of organized bodies that was everything the ranging reports had been building toward. Drogon turned with Jon and Scarrows toward the source. They flew north, the cold intensified. Jon felt it the way he'd felt it on the wall, the directional pressure of it. The cold that was a function of will rather than weather. The cold that had been building for 30 years and was now everything it was going to be. Scarrows flew into it, not without difficulty. The air got heavy the way it got heavy at altitude, but different, thicker with the specific resistance of something that was pushing back. The dragon worked harder, wings making the calculated adjustments of an animal that had been built for this. Jon kept his hands steady and let Scarrows navigate. Behind him, Drogon's enormous wingspan held the air with the force of the largest living thing in the world, pushing against something that would have stopped anything smaller. They found the Night King at the center of the cold. Jon had read the accounts, he had the word for it, he had the history of it, the 8,000 years of it, the fact of it. He had been building toward this for months. Encountering it was still nothing like the reading. The cold that came from the Night King was not metaphor. It was a physical property of the air in a radius around him, a cold that was not temperature but the specific thermodynamic quality of something that had decided the normal rules of heat and life and continuation did not apply to it. The dead around it moved with the organized deliberateness of something being directed rather than something that wanted to move. The Night King looked up. It saw them. Jon felt Scarrows orient, the body of the dragon sharpening in the specific way that meant the dragon understood what it was looking at. He looked at Daenerys, she looked at him, together. They dove. The Night King moved faster than the accounts, faster than anything that size should move, with the specific inhuman economy of something that did not waste energy on fear or hesitation. It moved away from Scarrows' approach and toward something else, toward Drogon. Jon understood the tactic immediately, not engage the faster dragon on the direct approach, force the other rider to respond, split the coordinated attack. Daenerys, she had already seen it. She pulled Drogon sideways in a maneuver that cost distance but preserved the line, keeping Drogon out of the Night King's reach while Jon and Scaros came around the far side. The Night King turned, three directions, Jon and Scaros from the north, Daenerys and Drogon from the south, the fire already starting. The Night King raised its hand. Ice formed in the air in a way that wasn't natural, not the gradual ice of temperature but instant, purposeful, a weapon. Daenerys pulled Drogon up and the ice missed. Jon felt Scaros bank hard left and held the position with the months of practice it had taken to be able to hold a position like this, the committed bank, the trust, the not bracing. He drew Longclaw, Valyrian steel in the cold. The Night King looked at the sword. Something changed in the quality of the cold around it. It knows, it's been here before and it knows what this means. Good, he committed. Scaros dove. The Night King moved again, the same sideways movement, the same inhuman economy. Daenerys came from the other side. Drogon's fire hit, not the Night King. The ice the Night King had been forming, the weapon in the air, the cold architecture of it. The fire consumed the cold the way fire and cold consume each other when they meet completely, neither surviving the contact. The Night King stumbled, not fell, stumbled, the specific loss of balance of something whose environment had changed unexpectedly. Jon was already there. Longclaw found the Night King. The accounts were consistent and he had read them 3 times and they were still not adequate preparation for the specific reality of the Night King stopping, not falling, stopping, the cessation of something that had been running for 8,000 years, complete, absolute. The cold retreated, not gradually, the way a fire goes out when you remove its fuel. Instant, total, the quality of the air returning to just cold northern cold, the cold of the deep winter north that was simply temperature and not will. The dead stopped. Every white in the engagement, the ones on the flanks where Rhaegal and Viserion were working, the ones in the army below, the ones on the periphery, all of them. The stopping was the loudest thing Jon had ever heard, which was strange because it was the absence of sound. The dead had been making a kind of sound without noise, the resonance of organized wrong movement, and when it stopped, the silence was enormous. Scaros landed on the frozen ground beside the Night King. Jon got down. He stood in the cold that was just cold. Daenerys brought Drogon down 20 feet away. She got down. She walked to him across the still field. Is it over? He looked at the north, at the deep north where the cold front had been building for 30 years and was now just landscape. I think so. Think so isn't Scaros. He's oriented south. She looked at Scaros. The dragon that had been pointing north since they crossed the wall was looking south at the wall at the direction of home. Oh yes, she exhaled. He put his hand out. She took it. They stood in the field in the cold that was just cold and they held on. Jaime found him at the well in the castle black yard at some hour in the deep night. Jon had come out because the specific quality of the silence in the aftermath of the dead stopping was something he needed space to be in, not people and not walls. The yard was empty except for him and the cold was just cold and the wall above them was 700 feet of ancient ice that had held and was going to keep holding. Jaime came out and found him there. Couldn't sleep. No. Neither could I. First real fight in 2 years. The fighting style has changed, still works, just different. You fought well. I fought like someone who was recalculating every 10 seconds. The dead fight differently. They don't hesitate. They don't tire. I've been fighting people my whole life. People hesitate. People tire. People make mistakes. The dead are honest in a way people aren't. Yes, Cersei would hate that I said that. She'd say the dead lack artistry. She values artistry, does she? She would never do something simply when it could be done elaborately. It's her best quality and her worst one simultaneously. She sent me here because she knew I needed to be here. She'd never admit that. Why not? Because admitting it would mean admitting she sees me clearly. And Cersei doesn't give people the knowledge that she sees them clearly. It's a vulnerability. You see her clearly. I've seen her clearly my whole life. It's not always useful. Your father, Rhaegar, he saw my father's king clearly. He saw what Aerys was becoming long before anyone else would admit it. He didn't do anything about it. I know, seeing something clearly and acting on it are different. I killed Aerys. I sat on his throne and waited for Ned Stark to come through the door and I let him think what he thought because I was tired and I didn't know how to explain it. I've regretted that for 15 years, not the killing, the sitting, the letting someone who mattered believe something wrong. N told Robb before he died that the judgment of you was too simple, that he hadn't asked the right questions. He'd been thinking about it for years, what he'd seen in the throne room and what it meant. He would have said it to your face if he'd had time. He was the most honorable man I ever met. Yes, and he thought the whole picture was more complicated than the version everyone was telling. He usually saw things that way. Your mother, what about her? She's alive. Yes, at Winterfell. I was Kingsguard when Rhaegar. I should have done something. I've thought about that too. I spent the rebellion doing what I was told and not asking whether what I was told was right. Aerys gave the order for the wildfire. Yes, and you killed him for it. Yes, that's not someone who does what they're told without asking whether it's right. That's someone who asks the question and acts on the answer at the worst possible moment. That's extremely costly courage. You're very strange, I get that. For your father's son, the bearing, something about the way you hold your ground, but the way you think is entirely someone else. My mother taught me, Lyanna Stark. Yes, the Starks teach their children to hold the difficult thing and say it plainly. Yes, it's either very admirable or very inconvenient for everyone around them. Usually both. I'd like to meet her, your mother, if she's willing. I'll ask her. She'll have opinions about you. She has opinions about everyone. Is that it's a good thing? She forms accurate opinions and then she adjusts them when the evidence changes. She'll have adjusted already. She pays attention. Right, the dead have stopped. Yes, that's what we came here to do. Yes, I'm going to go south in the morning. I have things to manage at Casterly Rock. The children to see, Cersei too, Cersei to have a conversation with that we should have had years ago. Good luck with Cersei with all of it. Yes, Lord Commander, Jon, thank you for what you said about your father. About what he thought, it matters more than is useful to admit, I know. They came back over the wall at midday. The army below was standing in the aftermath of the dead going still, the specific stunned quiet of people who had been fighting something and had watched it stop simultaneously everywhere at once. Jon could see Robb from the air on horseback looking up at the four dragons coming south. He could see Robb's face when he recognized him. He brought Scarrows down in the yard. Robb was there. Jon got down from the dragon and his brother, his cousin technically, but the word had never fit the relationship, was standing in the castle black yard and looking at him with the expression of a man who had prepared himself for several possible outcomes and was not certain which one had happened. It's done. The Night King is gone, the dead stopped, the wall holds, you should have told me, about all of it, the blood, the dragon, what you are, you could have, I know, I would have, I know. You would have made it about me, about protecting me, about what I was owed. I needed it to be about the wall, about what was coming. I needed everyone looking at the right thing. You're frustrating, I know, also correct. Usually your grace, Robb Stark, your brother saved the world. He's my cousin technically. He told me he's always been your brother. It's the right word, right? Come inside, you both look terrible. The Meister needs to look at when did that happen, I don't know, battle. The Meister looks at it first, then everything else. He's very like you, he's louder, you're both stubborn Starks, yes, come, the Meister. The political aftermath was slower than the battle and harder in different ways. Tyrion managed most of it, which was what Tyrion was for. The ceasefire held because Cersei had decided to hold it, and when Cersei decided something it held. Joffrey was sent to Essos before he could cause problems, which he went to with the sullen energy of someone who had been managed rather than persuaded and knew it. James stayed north for a month after the battle and then rode south. The letter he sent to Jon from the road said only, "Tell her I understand now." Jon assumed he meant Cersei and filed it in the category of things that were probably true and not his to navigate. Stannis bent the knee at Castle Black in a ceremony that was functional rather than ceremonial because that was how Stannis did everything. What he said was, "I serve whoever best serves the realm." Daenerys had said, "I intend to." He had looked at her for a long moment and nodded once. The Lord's Council that determined the shape of what came after was held at Dragonstone because Dragonstone was hers and the location was the statement. Jon sat at the table as the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch and as whatever else he was, and he was not particularly interested in debating the latter. Tyrion opened by saying, "The succession is the Queen and the Lord Commander in whatever arrangement they determine. Anyone who wants to argue about birth order is welcome to do so at a council. The Night King is no longer available to interrupt." Nobody argued about birth order. The arrangement Daenerys and Jon had discussed on the battlements of Castle Black the night before the engagement became broadly the arrangement the council accepted. She ruled. He served in the specific way that filling the gap served. The North was sovereign. The Watch was crown-funded and properly maintained. The specific terms that made the realm functional rather than the terms that made anyone maximally happy. Nothing made everyone maximally happy. Everything made most people adequately served. Tyrion said this was the best outcome any council had produced in his experience. Olenna Tyrell, who had remained at Dragonstone throughout on the grounds that it was warmer than King's Landing in winter and more interesting than Highgarden at any time of year, said that's a very low bar. Tyrion said most bars worth clearing are low when you look at them from the right angle. Olenna said I'm going to have that on my tombstone. Took her to Winterfell in the spring. Not alone, they traveled with a retinue because they were people who had retinues now and the retinues required management, but they arrived at Winterfell ahead of the retinue, which was easy when you could fly. He landed Scarrows in the yard. She landed Drogon beside him. He stood in the Winterfell yard and looked at the castle he'd grown up in, the most familiar place in the world to him, somehow both smaller and larger than he remembered. She stood beside him. She looked at Winterfell. The hot springs are underground, the castle is warmer than it should be. That's why the yard isn't all ice. The crypts go deep, the Starks are buried there going back 8,000 years. 8,000 years, the same number as the wall. It feels like the North. It is the North. I mean, it feels like the specific thing you mean when you say the North. Not just geography, something else, something about holding, something about endurance. This castle has been here through winter after winter. The Starks have been here holding it. The people in it have been doing the ordinary work of living in a hard place for a very long time, like the wall, like the wall. Catelyn Stark, in the Great Hall, you should go to her first. She raised you. She managed the complications of what you were alongside everything else she was managing. She deserves to see you first. I'll be here, you don't have to. I know, I want to. I want to stand in this yard and look at this castle for a while. Understand what you came from. It's cold. I have Drogon go. He went to the crypt before the Great Hall because there was a conversation he'd been needing to have for years, and the crypt was where you had it. Ned Stark's tomb was where it was, the place that had been prepared while End was alive in the northern way of being prepared. Jon stood in front of it with a torch and the specific cold of deep underground, which was not the wrong cold, just the honest cold of stone that hadn't seen the sun. I found a dragon. He said it to the stone the way you said things to the stone when the person wasn't there anymore and the stone was what you had. I know it's not what you were planning. I know when you carried the secret you weren't picturing this. I know you would have found a way to make this work. You made everything work. You made impossible things work by being stubborn enough that the impossible things gave up. She's outside in the yard. She wanted to look at the castle. She would have liked you. She makes the same quality of decisions you made. The ones where the right thing is also the hard thing. She'd have recognized it. I'm going to keep the name Jon Snow, not the other one. I know what the other one means and I know what using it would say. I'm saying something different. I'm saying I'm the person you made me. I'm saying the person you made was worth making. I'm saying the 15 years of carrying the secret cost you everything and I am not going to make that mean nothing by abandoning what the carrying produced. Thank you. He said it to the stone, to the carved face, to the man who had spent 15 years lying to everyone he loved to protect the one thing he'd promised to protect. He stood there a while, then he went up. He went to the great hall and Catelyn Stark was there and she was alive and she looked at him with the expression she always had with him, the complicated one that was never entirely comfortable and that had never managed to be unkind. I should have written more. Yes, I'm sorry, you saved the wall, we saved the wall, the Dragon Queen, yes, End he would have said I told you so about something, I'm not sure what. He always believed the watch reports long before anyone else would. I know. Is she outside, in the yard? I'll have someone bring her in, it's cold, she has a dragon, even so, she went to have someone bring Daenerys in. Jon stood in the great hall of Winterfell, he looked at the fire. This is what everything was for, not the throne, not the dynasty, not the prophecy, this specific room, this specific fire. The dead stopped and the cold retreating and people coming in from the yard. That's enough, it's more than enough. Ghost came in from somewhere and lay down at his feet. Daenerys came in from the yard. She looked at the great hall, it's warmer than I expected. Hot springs, I know you told me it feels what, like somewhere I could learn to know, not like somewhere I've been, like somewhere I haven't been yet, something to understand rather than claim, is that yes, that's exactly it. She looked at the fire, he looked at the fire. The dragons were on the towers outside and Ghost was at their feet and Winterfell was doing what Winterfell did, which was being exactly what it was, warm in the cold. Built for endurance, older than anything that had tried to threaten it. What if Jon Snow bonded with a dragon before he ever met Daenerys Targaryen? He didn't go looking for it. He went north because the report said something was wrong and he was the person who went to places most people didn't go. He found an egg in a rock crevice because he was looking carefully. He brought it back because he didn't know what else to do with it. It hatched because it was ready. He kept it hidden for 2 weeks because he needed time to think. He needed time to think because he had been doing competence as a way of not doing the other thing, which was figuring out what he actually wanted. And the dragon forced the other thing. He went to Daenerys not with a claim or a demand or a political position. He went with a box and 30 years of wrangling reports and the clear specific ask of a man who needed something he couldn't provide himself and who understood what she had that he needed. She read the reports. She met him at the dock in plain clothes and looked at him and said, "You're shorter than I thought." That was the beginning. The rest was 2 people from the same blood finding out that the things that had made them strange in every other context made them, for the first time, entirely normal in each other's company. The carrying they'd each been doing alone for their whole lives was not less heavy in the sharing, but was differently distributed. And differently distributed was the difference between sustainable and not. 4 dragons, Valyrian steel, the specific right configuration of people at the specific right moment doing the thing that needed doing, not destiny, not one prince promised. A lord commander who found an egg in a rock crevice and a queen who read 30 years of reports and both of them deciding that the dead were more important than the throne. The dead were stopped. The wall held, Scarrows oriented south. They went home. 3 days after the battle, Ed came to Jon with the wrangling report. Routine. The first routine wrangling report since the engagement, which made it not routine at all. The first report from the deep north that described nothing because there was nothing there. The first accounting of the land beyond the wall that had no direction to it, no cold front, no organized wrong thing moving south. Just the north, just what it was. Ed put the report on the table. Nothing. Jon read it, nothing. The wrangling party went 20 miles north and they found nothing except trees and the specific quality of silence that you get when nothing is eating you. How did they describe the quality of the silence? Cold but normal, their words. Old Henderson, who's been wrangling for 15 years, said it was the first time beyond the wall in 10 years that he hadn't felt watched. The watch keeps wrangling. Obviously, the wall keeps being manned. Obviously, the specific maintenance routines. I've been doing this since before you were Lord Commander. I know what the wall requires. The watch is going to be fine. The wrangling is going to happen. The records are going to be kept. You can go. I haven't said I'm going. Sam told me about the conversation you had the night before you sailed south. About how the watch needs someone who believes in it when you're not here. I believe in it. I've believed in it for 15 years. Mostly because I was here and there was nowhere else to go, but also because it matters. Go manage the realm, I'll manage the wall. You don't want to be Lord Commander, no. But I'll do it until someone better turns up. Sam thinks the funding from the crown is going to mean we can actually recruit rather than wait for criminals to be offered a choice. Actual volunteers, people who choose to be here. Yes, that's going to change the watch. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'm allowed to look forward to things. The dead are stopped. I'm looking forward to things. Good, send me a copy of every report, everyone, unedited. You'll read them all. Yes, of course you will. The first morning you were Lord Commander, you came to the yard before dawn and you looked at the wall like you were memorizing it. I remember, I thought, he knows what he's got, he knows what this is. A lot of Lord Commanders looked at the wall like it was a burden. You looked at it like it was worth the looking. That's what made you good at this. Right, the watch carries on. He went. Jon stood in the Lord Commander's quarters. He looked at the wall through the window. Worth the looking. Yes, that's exactly it. That's what I want to tell everyone who looks south and sees the wall as the place you send people you don't want. It's worth the looking. It has always been worth the looking. I'll make sure it's written down. He went to write it down. He went back to Castle Black once more before the year was out. Not for the watch, Ed had it. Not for the ranging, Sam was maintaining the record. He went back because there was something he'd been meaning to do since Eamon died and that the months of aftermath had kept pushing to later. He sat at the Meister's desk in the Castle Black library. The same desk where Eamon had sat for 60 years. The same view, the wall, the yard, the specific northern sky that did not perform. He wrote the record of the Night King's defeat. Not the official version that would be written by the Meisters who came to interview the survivors and who would produce something polished and authorized and necessarily simplified. He wrote the real one. The version that included the ranging reports and the egg in the rock crevice, and the 2 weeks of keeping it hidden in the assembly in the yard and the flight reconnaissance and the letter to Daenerys and what the letter said and what her letter back said and the white in the box and the lords in the courtyard and 4 dragons and Valyrian steel and the specific quality of the cold stopping. He wrote the names of everyone who was there. Not just the lords, every ranger, every soldier. Every person who had stood in the castle yard and looked at a white stopping and decided that the calculation had changed. He wrote Aemon's name first, Aemon Targaryen, called Meister Aemon, who held this watch for 60 years and who understood before anyone else what the watch was for and who spent his whole life in service of that understanding. He held a dragon before he died. He was satisfied. He wrote Sam's name. He wrote Ed's. He wrote Jaime Lannister's and noted the one hand in the Kingsguard style, and the fact that he'd come when asked and had fought without complaint and had gone home after to do the harder thing. He wrote the 47 names from the second ranging one by one, the same way he'd written them the first time, their names and what they'd done and that they'd held. He wrote Ned Stark's name and what Ned had carried for 15 years and what the carrying had cost him and what it had produced. He wrote his mother's name. He wrote Rhaegar Targaryen's name with the specific careful honesty of someone who was not going to simplify a complicated person, but was also not going to apologize for him. He believed in a prophecy and organized his whole life around the belief, and the belief was real, and what the believing cost was also real, and both of those things are true simultaneously, and anyone who tells you the history is simple is lying. He wrote Daenerys' name last. She read 30 years of ranging reports and came west to stop the dead. She fought at the wall and beyond it. She's governing the realm. He folded the document. He gave it to Sam, 2 copies, one here, one to the Citadel. They'll put it in the archive. Good, future Meisters will read it. That's what archives are for. You wrote Aemon first. Yes, he would have, I know. He was the reason any of this was possible. The watch maintained. The records kept. The chain of information that let me understand what I was looking at when I found the egg. He deserved to be first. He did. Worth the looking. What? Something Ed said about the wall. About the difference between people who look at it like a burden and people who look at it like it's worth the looking. And it is, come on. The retinue leaves at dawn and I'm going to make Ed's day worse if I'm still here when it does. You're coming back, for rangings, for the quarterly reports. To stand at the top of the wall and remember what it's for. Yes, I'm coming back, he went. Scarrows was in the yard in the specific patch of warmth he'd created for himself beside the eastern wall, the iron-gray scales and the gold eyes tracking Jon's exit from the building. He got on the dragon, they went south. The wall receded behind them, it stood, it had always stood, it was going to keep standing. What if the coldest mind in Westeros looked at the last living Targaryen and decided the boy was too valuable to kill? Tywin Lannister never moves on impulse. He never throws away what can still be used. So when the truth about the child reached Casterly Rock, every instinct he possessed should have pointed to the same answer: erase him. Quietly, permanently, the safe move, the clean move. The move that protects the Lannister name from any future claim, any future war, any future complication. Instead, Tywin saw something else. He saw leverage, he saw legacy, he saw a weapon so rare it only appears once in a generation, not a bastard to be hidden in the north under a false name, not an enemy to be quietly removed, something rarer than gold, something that could be shaped. What if Tywin Lannister took the boy who should have been his enemy and raised him as his own project? Not in name, not with the lion on his chest, but in the only ways that truly matter: how he thinks, how he walks into a room full of people who would kill him if they knew, how he understands power, debt, and the quiet mathematics of survival. What if the man who spent a lifetime teaching his children that a Lannister always pays his debts taught that same lesson to a Targaryen? This is what happens when the North never touches Jon Snow, when only gold does. Casterly Rock, 284 AC, 1 year after the war. The letter arrives from Dorne with the first light. Tywin does not open it immediately. He finishes the report already in front of him because a message from dawn that arrives at dawn is either catastrophe or urgency, and either way it will still be sitting there when the page is done. He finishes the page. He picks up the letter. He reads it once, sets it down, picks it up again and reads it a second time. Then he feeds it to the fire and watches every last scrap turn to ash before he sends for his brother. Kevin arrives the way he always arrives: steady, without performance, without wasted motion. The most reliable man Tywin has ever known, and the one he leans on hardest while offering the least thanks. Kevin steps into the solar, reads the complete absence of expression on his brother's face, and understands at once that something fundamental has shifted. What happened? Sit. Kevin sits. You remember the source I placed in the Tower of Joy? The Dornish contact, yes. He has sent word. Lyanna Stark did not die in the tower. She died a week later of childbed fever. The child lived. A boy. Eddard Stark is carrying him north with the intention of passing him off as his own bastard. The room goes completely still. Rhaegar's son, Kevin says quietly. Yes. A longer silence settles between them. If Robert knew. Robert must never know. Then we say nothing. The boy disappears into the north as Ned Stark's bastard, and we forget the entire matter. No. Tywin is looking at his hands the way he does when the calculation has already moved far beyond the present moment and into the decades ahead. He does not think from the immediate to the long term. He starts from the world he wants 20 years from now and works backward, step by careful step, to the single necessary action that must be taken today. The last Targaryen in Ned Stark's hands grows up northern. He grows up with that particular brand of honor that gets good men killed in courtyards and septs because they said the honest thing to the wrong king at the wrong hour. The last Targaryen in Robert Baratheon's hands does not grow up at all. Kevin studies him, and in hours. Tywin is quiet for a moment. In hours he grows up knowing what the world actually is. He stands. Intercepts Stark before he reaches Winterfell. I want the child here within the month. And if he refuses? Tywin looks at his brother with the flat, deliberate regard that has broken stronger men than Kevin. Offer him what he cannot refuse: the safety of his family, the security of his lordship, the assurance that no Lannister eye will turn north for a generation, and make him understand that refusal is the choice most likely to get the boy killed, because if I found out, Robert can find out, and if Robert finds out before we control the situation. He does not finish the sentence. He does not need to. Kevin already knows how it ends. Kevin stands. I'll go myself. Tywin nods once. Alone again in the solar at the top of Casterly Rock, he looks out at the sea and considers the single small coal still glowing in the ashes of a dynasty that burned itself out. That coal can start a fire, or it can be smothered. Tywin Lannister does not smother things that can start fires. That would be wasteful. The King's Road, north, 284 AC. Ned Stark is 5 days from Winterfell when Kevin Lannister finds him. 6 men, a wet nurse, a child, and the careful, measured pace of a man who cannot hurry without drawing the wrong kind of attention. The lies he has been carrying since the Tower of Joy live inside him like a blade turned the wrong way. He feels them every hour. The Lannister party numbers 20. They stop on a narrow stretch of road where the hills press close on both sides, the kind of ground that removes certain options from the conversation before the conversation even begins. Ned notices the positioning at once. He is not a man who performs easily, but he is not a fool. Lord Stark, my brother sends his regards. I was not aware the Lannisters took such interest in the northern roads. My brother takes interest in many things. Kevin pauses. He would speak with you privately about a mutual concern. Ned's hands tighten on the reins. What concern? Kevin glances toward the wet nurse and the child she holds. my brother knows what you are carrying, Lord Stark. He has known for 3 weeks. He would discuss what happens next with words rather than steel. He is offering you the conversation before the alternatives become necessary. End looks at the hills, at his 6 men, at the 20 Lannister soldiers, at the infant in the woman's arms. What does Tywin Lannister want with a bastard child from a dead woman? Not a bastard, Lord Stark. My brother is very precise about this. Kevan's voice is steady, carrying the exact message he was given, the last Targaryen. The wind comes down off the hills. The road is suddenly very quiet. En's face does not change, but his grip on the reins loosens, because Kevan is right. And if Tywin Lannister knows, every calculation En has made about the child's safety has just shifted into territory his honor, his plans, and his promise to Lyanna have no ready answer for. Where? Casterly Rock. My brother prefers his own ground for conversations that matter. And if I say no? My brother says he will respect a refusal. He will also place what he knows in Robert Baratheon's hands within the week. Not because he wishes the child harm, but because once the information leaves his control, it is out of everyone's hands. The silence stretches. End thinks of Lyanna, of the promise extracted with her last breath, of a world she could never have imagined when she asked him to keep the boy safe. She had not known that Tywin Lannister would one day know the truth. I'll come. They ride to Casterly Rock. Tywin's solar. The room smells of candle wax, old stone, and the particular mineral scent of a place where power has lived so long it has become geological. Casterly Rock is not built on the land the way other castles are. It is carved from a mountain that contains more gold than any other mine in the known world. Wealth here is not decoration, it is the air itself. End sits across from Tywin and places the fact of the child on the table between them, not the infant himself who waits in the anteroom with the wet nurse, but the truth of him. His name is Jon. His mother named him before she died. Tywin registers the name with no particular inflection. You are aware of what he is. I have been aware since the hour he was born. And your plan was to raise him in Winterfell as your bastard. My plan was to keep him safe. A noble ambition poorly executed, not because of your intentions, because of the information environment. You are one of a handful of people who survived the Tower of Joy. Howland Reed is another. The Kingsguard who stood there are dead, but Dorne has long memories and loose servants, and the question of what in Stark carried out of that tower has been asked in enough rooms that it was always going to reach someone with the resources to pursue the answer. I have those resources. And Robert. Robert does not have my resources. He has wine, a throne, and an emotional investment in not knowing things he cannot undo. At present this information ends with me. I intend it to remain that way. En studies him. Why? Tywin sets down the cup he has not been drinking from. Because I am a man who understands the value of things. And the last surviving Targaryen is the most valuable thing in the current political landscape of Westeros. Valuable not to Robert and not to me in the sense you suspect. Valuable because his existence is a fact that does not become safe simply because it is suppressed. Facts have a way of becoming known. The only real question is who controls the knowing. You want to control him. I want to ensure he survives long enough to be useful. His own voice, his own choices, his own life under my roof where I can see him. He is a child, not a piece on a board. Every child born with significance is both. The question is whether the people around them understand this or pretend they don't. You have been pretending. It has worked for a year. It will not work for 20. The room is quiet for a long moment. Ent's voice when it comes is steady. What exactly are you proposing? The boy stays here? He is raised as a ward of Casterly Rock, not a Lannister in name, not publicly acknowledged as anything more than a child under my protection. He is educated, trained, and kept safe. When the political landscape permits it, we determine what his existence means and how to use it constructively. Use it. Tywin does not flinch from the word. Yes, use it, that is what powerful things are for. End is very still. He thinks of Lyanna, of the promise, of a safety she could never have imagined when she asked for it. He names his conditions one by one. The child is not harmed, not used against the North, not revealed to Robert, not turned into a weapon against the people who should be his blood. End wants the right to see the boy not often but truly enough to know he is alive and well, and when the boy is old enough to understand, he is told the truth, not Tywin's version of it, the truth. Tywin agrees to every term with the flat, unadorned delivery of a man whose word is his currency, and who protects that currency with absolute care. End goes to the anteroom. He takes the child from the wet nurse and holds him for a long moment. This boy, who carries his sister's northern blood and a dragon prince's name and the weight of the world already attached to a life that has barely begun. "I will come back," he says very quietly to the infant who cannot understand. "You will know me, I promise." He carries the child back into the solar and places him in Tywin Lannister's arms. Tywin looks down, his face does something End does not expect. Not warmth, Tywin does not do warmth, but a careful, absolute attention, the look of a man who has just taken possession of something he intends to keep. "Jon." The child regards him with the gray eyes of the north and the particular unimpressed expression of a baby who has already been passed between too many hands in a single day. Tywin looks at End. "You may leave, Lord Stark." End leaves. He rides north carrying the absence of the child the entire way home. Casterly Rock, 290 AC, 6 years later. Jon is 6 years old and learning about grain futures. He sits at the table across from the master of coin for the rock, a competent but unremarkable man named Harris, who is explaining how 3 years of harvest records can be used to anticipate prices and position Lannister contracts to advantage. Jon listens with the focused intensity of a child who has already learned that failing to listen in this household carries a particular kind of consequence, not violence, not shouting. The cold, precise silence of Tywin's disapproval, a stillness that somehow cuts deeper than any raised voice. "If we buy the contracts when prices are low and the harvest is good, then hold them for the year when the harvest fails. We sell when the price is high," Harris finishes. "Yes," Jon says, "but then the people who need the grain can't afford it. The small folk, if the price is high because we held the contracts, they can't buy bread." Harris blinks, suddenly looking slightly panicked, the expression of a man who was not prepared for this particular angle from a 6-year-old. Tywin enters without making an entrance. He is simply there as if he has always been in the room and has only now chosen to be noticed. He heard the last exchange. He looks at Jon. "Continue." Jon repeats the observation carefully, the way a 6-year-old presents a thought to a very powerful man. "Hungry people are angry people. Angry people cause problems that cost more than the profit from the grain contracts." Tywin studies him for a long moment. "Correct." He dismisses Harris with a glance. The man leaves, visibly relieved. Tywin sits across from the boy. "Where did you learn that, about angry people?" "From the histories, the dance of the dragons, the smallfolk uprisings." "I told you to read the histories. I did not specifically assign the dance of the dragons to a 6-year-old. It was on the shelf." Tywin has been assessing this child since the day Stark placed him in his arms, and the assessment has never finished because it keeps expanding to accommodate new data. Jon at 6 plays in the yard with Tyget's boys and chases cats with the ordinary abandon of any child his age. He also reads grain reports and asks questions about supply chains that startle men twice his age. The cover story in the household is thin, a minor lord's son from somewhere unremarkable, but no one presses it. No one is curious enough or foolish enough to press. "You were right about the contracts," Tywin says. "There is a balance between profit and stability. Maximize one at the expense of the other and you eventually lose both. This is the thing most men with power never learn. They optimize for today's gain and create tomorrow's rebellion." Jon considers this. Is that what happened with the Targaryens? Tywin is still for a moment, in part. And with the Mad Kings. Also in part, madness has its own logic. It does not respond to correction the way poor strategy does. The rest of it was that no one stopped it early enough. Why not? Because stopping it required someone willing to pay the price of stopping it, and the men who could have paid were not willing. Jon's gray eyes, not Lannister eyes, hold Tywin without flinching. "Were you? I made choices I could live with. They were not all correct. Were you willing to pay it if you had to?" That question has no useful answer now. "I'm not asking for a useful answer," Jon says. "I'm asking for a true one." Tywin is quiet for a long time. "Go to your mathematics lesson." Jon goes, alone in the room. Tywin thinks that child is going to be extraordinary or catastrophic. He has not yet determined which. He suspects it may be both. Casterly Rock, 293 AC. Jon is 9 and learning to fight. The Master Tarms is Sir Adam, a man who has trained children for the Rock for 20 years and who knows within 3 days which ones are worth the time. On the third day, Jon does something Adam has seen only once or twice in his career. He loses badly in a spar, immediately identifies the exact reason for the failure and corrects it completely in the next exchange. Not gradually, immediately. The adjustment is total, as if the failure never happened except that it has been filed, processed, and made useful. Adam reports this to Tywin. Tywin says good, push him harder. Sir Adam pushes harder. Jon responds to harder with better. By the time he is 9, his fighting style is not purely southern, not water dance, not northern. It is the specific style of someone who has been given multiple approaches, kept what works and discarded what does not. To those who know what to look for, it looks like blood remembering something the boy has never been taught. Breakfast remains the daily constant. Jon at Tywin's right hand since the age of 4, going through the day's schedule and the week's numbers, not warmly. Tywin does not do warmth at breakfast or at any other meal, but consistently, every morning. One day Jon says, "My Latin is stronger than my High Valyrian, but they're both difficult languages and I study them the same amount." "They are not the same difficulty," Tywin replies. "Latin is orderly, the grammar is logical and consistent, the exceptions are few. High Valyrian is the opposite. It was the language of a people who communicated as much through context and implication as through the words themselves. Understanding it requires understanding the culture, not just the language. You understand order well, you are still learning implication."